So in chapter 9, what we did in chapter 9, we prepared that multiple budgets. Well, let's see if this is gonna work. Yes, so we went through all the type of budgets, starting with the sales budgets. Then we did the production budget. Then we did direct material budget. That we did direct labor budget. Then we did manufacturing overhead budget. Then we did sales administrative expenses budget. In the meantime, we calculated the finished goods ending inventory. After that, we prepare the cash budget. Not cash flow budget, just cash budget. We prepare the cash budget. After that, we finish with the income statement and balance sheet. And that's where we left last time, on the balance sheet. So now what's interesting up to this point? Up to this point, we prepared the static budget. What means static budget? Budget means that this budget is prepared only and only for one level of activity. If the sales in every month are the sales which are projected, only and only at that point we're gonna reach all the numbers from the budget. If the sales deviate like 1 unit away from the budget, then all the rest of the budgets are wrong. So what we can do with that case? With that case, if that's happened, then we have to prepare this flexible budget. What means flexible budget? Flexible budget will be a different level of activities. We're going to change the level of activities. We can prepare the budget on different either units of sales or either machine hours. So our example here will be with machine hours. Now, if you look the static budget was prepared only and only for 10,000 hours. If the machine working 10,000 hours, that should be the cost. Now, in reality, that machine didn't work 10,000 hours. That machine worked 8,000 hours. Obviously, if the machine worked less hours, all the costs will be less, except the fixed cost, because the fixed cost is always going to stay the same. We already know that. We already know how the costs behave. Variable cost per unit stays the same. Fixed cost in total stays the same. So what drives the variable cost is the number of units. Obviously, if we using the machine for less hours, our variable cost all across will be less. So if we prepare this variance analysis is basically we're going to chase what's the budget versus the actual. And if we budget for 10,000 hours and we're working only 8,000 hours, that means we're using machine less than 2,000 hours. Because we're using less than 2,000 hours, our indirect labor cost actual is less than what we budgeted. So we have a favorable variance. Every time when the cost that we're expecting, if we're expecting $40,000 cost and the actual cost is below that, we're going to have, it's in our favor. So we're going to have a favorable variance. Every time the indirect material, the same idea. We're expecting to spend $30,000. We're spending only $25,000. That's another favorable variance here. F means favorable, U means unfavorable. So once we see the overall spending, it looks like that we're saving $11,650. Looks like. But that's only and only because we're using the machine less hours. Now let's see if that's actually true. Because from this report, we cannot conclude on that one. So what we have to do? We have to ask ourselves a question. Since the cost variances are favorable, is our manager done actually a good job? Well, we cannot answer that question. Why? Because the actual results deviate from the budget results. If we have budget for 8,000 hours and the actual results are for 8,000 hours, then we can compare the results. So what we have to do, we have to prepare a different set of budgets. We have to move to the flexible budget. How we can move to the flexible budget? Well, very easy. When we're preparing the budget, original budget, we already know that those costs are variable and the rest is fixed cost. So here on this side. When we're preparing the static budget, we know that these costs are variable, those are fixed cost. So what that means? Those fixed costs is going to stay the same, regardless what level of activity we choose. Where the variable costs, they're going to start changing. How they going to change? Based on the level of activity. So for that reason, what we have to do, we have to find out what's the variable cost per unit. Now the question is, can we do that? The answer obviously yes. How can we do that? Well, indirect total labor cost is $40,000 because we're using the machine for 10,000 hours. So how much is the indirect labor cost per 1 hour? Well, that will be 40,000 divided by 10,000, right? And that will be $4. How much will be indirect material for 1 hour, 1 machine hour? That will be the same calculation. 30,000 divided by 10 is going to be $3. And the power, we can get the same. Once we have the variable cost per unit, so again, we're remembering that how the costs behave. Variable cost per unit stays the same, in total goes up in relation to the activity, where the fixed cost in total stays the same per unit, that's different story. So having that in mind, we can easily calculate the variable cost per unit per machine hour. And once we have that, then we can easily prepare a flexible budget for different level of activity. We can prepare a flexible budget for 8,000 hours, 10,000 hours, 12,000 hours. Once we do that, using the same logic here, that the unit per cost is $4, for 8,000 hours, we're going to get the number. $3 for 8,000 hours, we're going to get the number. 50 cents times 8,000 hours, we're going to get the number. And we have our numbers now. For 8,000, then we can prepare for 10,000, then we can prepare for 12,000 units. Once we prepare all this information, now what we're expecting is we're expecting that our actual results going to fall down in one of those numbers that we have in budget for. And luckily, in this case, the actual results fall exactly on the 8,000 hours. So let's see now, for 8,000 hours, we're projecting to spend on the indirect cost $32,000. In reality, we're spending $34,000. Now the question is, do we have a variance? What do you think? Again, we're supposed to spend $32,000. As you can see when we're using the machine 8,000 hours. In reality, we're spending $34,000. Now, is there any variance?
Yeah, isn't there a variance of
Yes,
2,000?
over
Yeah.
2000.
Right, 2,000.
Going
Is that in our favor or against us?
against
Against, because we're overspending. How much we're overspending?
2000.
$2,000. So what will be the answer here? What's the variance for indirect labor?
A, $2,000 unfavorable.
Unfavorable. That's correct. So let's go with the next one. For the next one, let's see the numbers here. For the indirect material, we're supposed to spend $24,000. In reality, we're spending $25,500. Again, do we have a variance?
Yeah, it's still
Yes.
fitting.
Is it in our favor?
No,
No.
No.
Where we are?
first A.
A. Unfavorable. Yes, again, unfavorable. And now once we move to flexible budget, which is for the same level of activity where the actual results are, then we can have a proper variance analysis. And now we can see that this company is not saving. Watch the initial report. I want you to see the numbers on the initial report. Initial report shows that we are saving $11,650. But in reality, in our actual reality, we overspending $3,350. Once we move from the static budget into the flexible budget for the same level of activity, then we can compare the actual numbers with the budget numbers and find the differences. And as we can see, from $11,600 favorable, we move to $3,350 unfavorable. So instead of saving money 11,000, we're losing 3,350, and that's a huge difference. So now the question is, why is that? Well, simply because of the level of activity. Once we compare the static budget with the actual budget, there is a difference based on the lower usage of the hours. But for that reason, we have to move to the flexible budget, which flexible budget is going to explain now. Where should be the budget on the actual hours, and then we can compare the budget level of activity for the actual hours with the actual spending. And for that reason, we're going to have here the first variance will be based on the activity. First variance, when we see the static budget versus the flexible budget, that will give us our activity level, because now the activity changes. And the next one we'll use for once we move into the flexible budget, then we compare the flexible budget with the actual results. That calculation we're going to use for the cost control. Remember, the second function, actually the third function for the manager is control. First one is to plan. So once we have the goal, the first activity is to plan ahead. So we're going to identify all the alternatives. We're going to choose the proper alternative, and we're going to follow that alternative. In the meantime, we're going to prepare the budget. And that budget is going to tell us how, from where we are, we're going to go where we're supposed to be, or we want to go. After we do that, the second thing we have to directly motivate during the process of reaching our goal. The last activity, the third activity, was control. What we have to control, we constantly have to compare based on our budget where we're supposed to be. And once we see the actual results, where we are. And we constantly compare where we are versus where we're supposed to be. And if there's a deviation, we start to find why we're ahead or why we're behind. Again, the only reason we're doing that is to achieve our goal. What the non-for-profit organization is going to do? Pretty much the same structure of the budget. Exactly the same. But there will be some modification on different parts of the budget. Who's going to use that budget? That will be for the municipality, for the federal government, for hospital, for the university, for voluntary association, anything. Even for your household, you can prepare your budget. And again, you can use the budget for control in order to achieve your goal. So that was chapter 9. Now let's move to chapter 10 and make a transition between one chapter and another chapter. So now once we have this idea about moving from the static budget into the variable budget, let's see how we're going to do this. In order to move to the flexible budget, we have to know a few things. First, we have to understand that there's always a standard. And what the standard means. Standard means is the norms and benchmarking for measuring the performance. There are two types of standards which we commonly using. Now, before we go to the two types of standards, let's think about something. I want you to think about the cost. When we say the total cost, when you go to the store, when you're shopping, let's say you're buying potatoes, and you're going to the cashier, and he tells you $10. Why are you paying $10?
Because he told us it was $10.
Usually. But how they come up with the $10 price? Because you have
They add us everything like
a
it's
quantity
yeah, how
and
much
you
they
have a
are entering.
price for the quantity, right? Make sense? So the cost, the whole idea is you to understand that the cost is not a random number. The cost is mathematical function of two variables. Which are the variables? First is the number of units, and the second is price per unit. You're going to Starbucks and you're paying, I don't know how much you're paying now for the small coffee, but let's say $2 for the medium black. And you're paying $2 because you're buying one coffee, and the price per coffee is $2. If you buy two coffees, you know that you have to pay $4. If you buy the coffee for the entire class, if the class is, let's 30 people, you know that you have to spend $60. Why? Again, mathematical function of two variables. So now let's go back to the standards. Now, for the standards, in order to make that coffee, we have to follow specific standards. What will be the standards? How much unit we should use to make that coffee? What will be the unit? Unit of coffee, unit of water, and how the process going. So we're going to have the quantity standards for the coffee that we have to use to make that coffee. And then we're going to have a price standards. And the price standard will be how much we should pay for the every unit of input that we're putting into our product. Again, now we're on the cost side, we're not on the selling side. Sadly, in this course, we're only on the cost side. We're not chasing the sale price. So, in order to produce that black coffee, we need to have a standard how much coffee we have to use for every single cup. Because if we don't follow our standards, the quality of our coffee is not going to be good enough, and the customer is going to start paying for that coffee. At the same time, we have to have a cost standard for the cost. What will be from where the standard for the cost will be? How much we're supposed to pay for the coffee that we're buying for the vendors. That will be our standards. Now, what we're going to do once we have the standards, we're going to have standards since we know the product has the three costs. Every product has three costs. It has direct material, direct labor, manufacturing overhead. Then when we run the report, actual versus budget, we're going to have we may have a variances for direct material, we have the variances for direct labor, we have variances for manufacturing overhead. Once we have our standards, we're going to chase only the variances which are exceeding our standards in the negative side. What we chasing with that? We're chasing to achieve the effect of the management by exception. So basically, every time when we go above our standards or don't meet our standards, we're going to chase those variances and we're going to find out why we have those variances, and we try to stay with the standards. That's how we achieve the quality. How are we going to prepare those variance analysis? It's very simple. Everything starts with the report. You see the report. You're expecting something. You're seeing something else. Once you see it, you're going to start analyzing. Is there any variances? Currently, I'm here. I'm supposed to be here. Is there any variances? If there are variances, then you're going to identify questions. Now, listen carefully, because this is a very important part of the process, which I usually personally skipping. But I want you as a manager not to skip this part. Once you see variances, don't jump directly to corrective action. In the contrary, identify questions. Wait and receive explanation for that questions, and after that, take the corrective action. I'll show you in a few minutes why. Once you take the corrective action, implement those in the process, continue the process, run the new reports, compare again where you are, where you're supposed to be, and keep going with the cycle. If there are variances, chase the variances, identify the questions, wait for explanation. Once you hear the explanation, and once you find the explanation, then take the corrective action, implement those actions for the period, and keep going with the next one. That's why it's very important you to understand the whole process. Analytical process here is very important for you to understand for where exactly the problem is. But you won't be able to find the problem if you don't ask questions and if you don't wait for the response. Don't jump directly to the action. Again, I'll show you in a second. So how we're going to set the standards? We're going to have standards, obviously, for the price, since the cost is variable is mathematical function of two various variables, which will be the cost per unit and the number of units. We have to have standard for the price, and we have to have the standard for the quantity. Who's going to help us with those standards to achieve those standards? Well, for the cost, we can ask the accountant person or engineers or purchasing department. And for the quantity standards, again, we can ask some agent or product managers or customers. We can chase those ones. Now we're going to have two types of standards. One standard will be ideal standard. Now, ideal standard can be obtained under the best circumstances, which requires employee to work at 100% peak efficiency all the time. My question for you is, how many of you working?
I'm working.
Everyone?
Everyone? Okay. So how many hours per day are you working? I mean, if you're international student, you have like a 24 hours per
8 hours.
week, right?
10.
So 8 hours. 8 hours. Let's stay with 8 hours.
Okay.
Question for you. Out of 8 hours, how many hours you working on the 100% peak efficiency?
Probably like 3.
Out of 10 hours, 8 hours.
How about out of 8 hours? We're chasing with the 8 hours.
5.
No, I work
5?
for 10 hours, so I am on the peak efficiency of 8 hours.
8 hours. Okay, so that means 80%.
Yeah.
Okay. How about the rest of the people?
Like 60% maybe.
60%?
Yeah.
Okay. So is it possible for we to work on the 100% peak efficiency to achieve the ideal standards?
No.
No, clearly not.
Yeah. For me, it depends on the weather.
It depends on the weather. Okay. What kind of job you doing?
I'm Amazon delivery driver.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a tough. Amazon is tough because
Because
Amazon chasing efficiency a lot, and you're
yeah,
on the
because
clock.
if
You're on
if
the
if
clock,
yeah, if weather is hot, it's difficult to run always all day.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, with the Amazon delivery, that's tough because if how many times you can deliver late before the company the contract is canceled?
No, that's not a choice.
That's not
That's why I said I have to be on the maximum efficiency because if I get slow, I got a call that you're slow, you're behind. You will not get your another shift if you didn't finish this, parcel.
right, right. Okay.
Yes, we
S-
always have to be on the maximum.
Interesting. So if you cannot, obviously ideal standard will be something in the perfect conditions. Again, is that realistic? Obviously not. So what we're going to have when we implementing our standards, we're going to stay with the practical standard. What's this practical standard? Now, the practical standard will be tight but attainable, which requires reasonable, although highly efficient effort by the average employee. Now we're going to one word that I love, which is average employee. Now the question is, what is average employee? Is the average employee today was the average employee 10 years ago
No,
or 20 years ago,
definitely not.
right? That's where we're going here. So in order to understand the practical standards, we have to come to the simple thinking. What's the on the average? And average today, if the average today spend let's say 60%, let's ignore the Amazon drivers for a second. Sorry, but let's stay with the 60% efficiency. Now, if the average employee now have 60% efficiency, if you check the average employee like of 20 years ago, and we may find that that efficiency was way higher than today, right? So, and now you can see how the standards are going to affect the quality of our products, quality of our services, and quality of our life. So for our purpose here, in order to set up the correct standards, we're going to set up the standard for the price per unit. What will be that standard for the price per unit? That will be the final price when the unit is actually delivered. It's going to include the cost of the material, delivery, any discount, shipping, receiving, and other such a cost. We already know when you purchase something online and you see shoes for $50, that's not the final price that you pay. Once you put the delivery, once you put the freight, delivery, there's some taxes, some ecological fees, some this and that, and the price comes completely different. That's how we're going to set up our standards, having in mind everything in the price, including the discount. Then we're going to set up standard for our quality. What will be the quality? The quality will be the amount of material for each unit as we put allowance for the unavoidable waste, for the spoilage, and for the other normal inefficiency. We're talking about normal inefficiency. We're not talking about abnormal inefficiency. So our standard will be for something we to produce by having allowances for many things. The question is, if you want to picture this, is if you want to cook chicken with potato, and in the recipe says use 2 pounds potato, how many pounds potato you're gonna buy? 2 pounds potato or 3 pounds potato?
3.
Why?
It's better to have too much and too little.
Would there be, once you get the potato, now the recipe says 2 pounds potato, but those potato are peeled and ready to cook, correct?
Yep.
So when you buy the potato, are they peeled and ready to cook?
No.
No. So we have to have that in mind. So when we're going to buy the potato, if you go and follow the recipe, buy exactly 2 pounds potato, you may end up with 1.5 pounds. So you won't be able to prepare the meal, which is on the picture. Why? Because once you start peeling the potato, one of them can be rotten, and peel. This is all unavoidable waste and the spoilage that you have to keep in mind. So basically, you're always going to buy a little bit higher quantity in order to cover that unavoidable waste in the spoilage. Make sense?
Yep.
So next thing, Let's go with the standard rate. This is for the material. Now, what we have to have in mind, the product has three costs. Which are the three costs? Direct material, direct labor, manufacturing overhead. So for that reason, we have to have standards for the material, which is the price versus quantity. Now we have to set up the standard for the hours, for direct labor, which will be standard for the hours and rate for the hours. Standard rate per hour and standard hours per unit. So what will be the standard rate per hour? That will be the rate that we're paying for the employee plus Canada Pension Plan, employment insurance, benefits, and any other labor costs which are related to our employee. How about standard hours per unit? Well, that will be the time that spending on the product plus allowance for normal inefficiency. What will be the normal inefficiency today? Washroom, cell phone checking, text messaging. We have to set up, we have to have the standards, and we have to include those one for the standard hours per unit. So now what's going to happen is I have this my colleague. She's working in the she's running her own accounting company, right? She hired the person and she paying the person for 8 hours per day, and then she's telling me, well, like I'm seeing her 2 hours per day. She's just spending on the cell phone, texting, laughing, and this and this, and I'm charging my clients. How am I supposed to charge my clients now when she's charging her clients for the hours that her accountant spent on the file, the question is, does she have to charge for that idle time or not? But that will be something different. But here for the standard hours, again, we're going to include that hours. Any normal inefficiency which are related to our labor operation. Now let's set up the standard for the variable overhead. We're going to have the price standard for the variable overhead, and we're going to have the quantity standard for the variable. Price standard will be the variable rate that we're going to get it from the predetermined overhead rate calculation. We're going to have estimation of the cost. We have the estimation for the usage allocation base, and we're going to come up with the price. And then we're going to have the quantity standard. The quantity standard will be the activity and allocation base, which are used to calculate that predetermined manufacturing overhead. Once we have those standards, we're going to prepare the standard cost card. The standard cost card is going to look like this. Again, remember, cost, here the cost that you're seeing, at the very end, the cost is mathematical function of two variables. Quantity times cost per quantity. We have 3 pounds, and because the direct material costs $4 per pound, that's why we pay $12. Direct labor, 2.5 hours worker work, we're paying $21 per hour. We have to pay in total $52.50. Variable overhead is we are allocating the variable overhead based on the direct labor hours. And we are allocating for every direct labor hour, we are allocating $3, so that means $17.50. So our product cost, standard cost per unit here will be $72. Why? Because we're using those standards with that prices to come up with that cost. We're going to have calculation for the price standard and the quantity standard separately. Why is that? Because different people are responsible for different things. We don't want to keep people responsible for the things that they cannot control and they cannot affect. So for that reason, we are going to have a price standard and we have the quantity standard. Purchasing manager will be the one responsible for purchasing the raw materials. So he'll be responsible for the price standard. And production manager is the one who's going to use those activities, those materials that the purchasing manager purchase. The production manager is going to use the material and he's going to be responsible for the quantity standard. Also, the other reason is that buying and using materials happen in different time. Simple example is if you need a milk, you're gonna go to Costco, you're gonna buy, let's say, 4 liters milk. But now, because once you have 4 liters milk, you're not gonna drink it right away just because you have a milk. You're gonna use it in different portions with the different time of the week until you use it completely. So again, buying and using happen in different times. And for the time being, you're going to keep it as an inventory in your fridge. And then you're going to use it for whatever production you want to produce in your household. So next question is the standard same as a budget? Absolutely not. But can we use the standard to set up the budget? Yes, we can. And that brings us to the variance analysis. Now, in the variance analysis, now we start chasing the variances. Now, again, back to the point that cost is mathematical function of two variables, price per unit and quantities, number of units. For that reason, we may have a variance either because the price per unit change, either because the quantity changes. That's why we're chasing two variances. First one will be the price variance. We're going to compare the actual price versus the standard price that we have based on our standards. And then we're going to compare the quantity variance. Then we're going to do the quantity variance, where we compare the actual price, actual quantity versus the standard quantity that we have for our products. Again, two variances, price variance, quantity variance. On the price variance, difference between the actual price and the standard price. Quantity variance, difference between the actual quantity and standard quantity that we have for our standards. That will be for the material. Now, since we have the three costs for the product, we have direct material, direct labor, manufacturing overhead. So we're going to have three different price variances. Material price variance for direct material, labor rate variance. Now we're going to change the terminology a little bit. Labor rate variance for direct labor, and variable overhead spending variance for the variable manufacturing overheads only. Then on the quantity variance, we're going to have material quantity variance for direct material, labor efficiency variance. We're changing quantity with efficient. The question is how efficient we are of using our workers for direct labor, and variable overhead efficiency variance for the variable manufacturing overhead portion only. And then what we're going to do is something like this, but now I'm going to forget about this and we're going to move to Excel spreadsheet. And on the Excel spreadsheet, we're going to start building our knowledge. So let me stop sharing this and let's move now to the Excel spreadsheet. Let's make it a little bit bigger so you can see it better. And we're going to do some writing here. So first, what we have on one side, we're going to have the actual. That will be our actual here. On the other side, we're going to have our standard. Let's put it here. That will be our standard. Actual, it's going to come from, let's make it a little bigger here. For the actual, we're going to have, let's stay on the direct material here. In this case, we're going to stay on direct material. On direct material, on one side, we're going to have the actual quantity time. I'm wondering where to put that time. Probably is going to put it here somewhere. Time actual price. And that's how we're going to get the actual cost. Make sense? For the standard, we're going to have standard quantity time standard price. And that's how we're going to get the standard cost. Now we're going to have our actual cost, and we're going to get the standard cost. Make sense? So let's make it more fancy here. That will be our standard cost, actual cost here. Let me find out how can I circle it to left to right. No, like this. Okay. And then stretch it to get what I wanted. Like this. So that will be my actual cost here. Now I have perfect. That will be my actual, and that will be my standard here. Now the question that I have for you, can I compare those two numbers?
Yes.
Based on what? What's common between actual cost, actual price, and standard cost, standard price? What's in common?
The
Is there
quantity.
anything in common? Yeah, but on one hand I have actual quantity, on the other hand I have standard quantity. Can I compare the actual quantity with the standard quantity? The problem is that there is nothing common between this number and this number. So what do I have to do? I have to do something in the middle. The simple thing is to do something in the middle. What will be that in the middle? Something that have something from this calculation and something that have on this calculation. So for that reason here on the middle, I'm going to have something flexible, which will be including the actual cost, actual quantity in this case, actual quantity, and I'm going to get something. So now I'm getting from this equation, I'm getting the actual quantity. And from this equation, I'm going to get the standard price. Now I have a room to compare those numbers. I can compare the middle number with the standard, and I compare the middle number with the actual. Why? Because now I have something in common. Make sense? So from here, what changes? Standard price stays the same. Then what changes here? The quantity changes. Make sense?
Yeah.
So when I compare this number with this number, I'm going to find out how much is my quantity variance. Why? Because the only thing that drives the number, the difference now, is the quantity. So those the difference between those two calculations is going to give me my quantity variance. Now let's compare the other two numbers. Let's compare those two calculations now. What's common with this calculation and what's different? Can you tell me?
Actual quantities
The
common.
same.
The price is
The
different.
price is different, right? So that's how we're going to eliminate the effect of the quantity. And we're going to see what's the effect on the price change because of the effect on the total cost because of the change of the price. And that will be our price variance. Once we compare the last two, the both numbers, actual with the standards, we're going to see how much is our spending variance. And that's what we're going to use for our calculations. Once we see the difference between the quantity variance and the price variance altogether, that's going to give us the spending variance. Make sense? So what we have to understand, on the actual cost is actual quantity times actual price. Standard cost is standard quantity, standard price. In the middle, we're going to have calculation that's going to get something from the actual, which is the actual quantity, and we're going to get something from the standard price. And that's how we're going to isolate, and we're going to see what's the variance here between those two numbers only because of the quantity changes. And here we're going to see what's the difference and what's the variance due to only on the price change. Obviously, the difference between the actual and the standard will be our spending variance. One thing you have to understand, all this variance analysis is prepared based on the flexible budget. That means we are on the same activity level for the standard and the same activity level of the actual results. Now let's go back to the slides and let's start. Let's just finish those slides and then we're gonna go to the doing some examples. And then you're gonna start making more and more sense. First, again, we're gonna get the actual quantity, actual price, standard quantity, standard price, and in the middle we're going to have something that have something common with the first equation and something common in the second equation. We're going to get the actual quantity times standard price. Once we see what's the variance due to the only to the quantity change, that's going to give us our quantity variance. Once we see what the variance due only to the price change, that's going to give us price variance. Those two, price and quantity variance, going to give us our spending variance. And this is the explanation of the actual quantity, explanation for the standard quantity, explanation for the next one is for the price, actual price versus the standard price.
Professor, we cannot see your slides.
No slides? Yes, because I haven't shared it with you. How selfish professor I am. Huh? Let's go back here. Thank you for telling me this because sometimes I'm just can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
So
Prof.
again, on one side, on the right side, you're gonna have standard quantity, standard price. On the left side, we're gonna have actual quantity and actual price. In the middle, we're gonna have something from the left side and something from the right side. And then we're gonna start preparing the variances. Why? Because now the right side and the middle side in the middle have price in common. And that's how we're going to isolate and we're going to find how much is the quantity variance. Then once we taking the left side with the middle part, we're going to keep the actual quantity in the same reality, and that's how we're going to isolate the price variance. Price variance plus the quantity variance is going to give us the spending variance. And again, this is explanation about the actual quantity. The actual quantity for the different costs that we have in the product, which is direct material, direct labor, variable manufacturing overhead, will be the actual quantity of material that was actually used, or labor used, or variable overhead used, where the standard will be same thing, but on the standards, based on our standards. For the price, again, that will be actual price that we actually paying for the material, or actual rate that we're paying for the labor, or actual rate that we're using for the overhead. And the standard will be based on our standards. Now, once we have those one, we can come up with the formula, or the formula that I show you, that the actual quantity times actual price minus actual quantity times standard price is going to give you the price variance. Again, the quantity stays in the same reality, price changes, we're isolating the price effect, and we're getting the price variance. On the other side, on the quantity variance, we're keeping this price in the same reality, standard price, and that's how we're isolating the effect of the change in the quantity. And that's how we getting the quantity variance. Now let's start with the questions. The last thing that I have to tell you is for the material, for direct material, we're going to have a material price variance. For the labor, now we're not measuring the labor by price, we're measuring labor per rate. We're going to have the labor rate variance. For the variable overhead, we're going to have variable overhead spending variance. On the quantity side, we're going to have material quantity variance. On the labor, we're going to show how efficient we are of using our labor. And the variable overhead, again, we're going to show how efficient we are on using our overhead. And questions now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the question, move to the Excel spreadsheet, and we're going to do those together on the Excel spreadsheet. This time I won't forget to share my screen. Okay, we have this table. We're going to start building slowly on this table. So I'm going to move to the new worksheet here. And the first thing will be direct material, first calculation. So let's see our question here. Our question is that this company follow material standards, direct material standards. So once you see the follow direct material standard, that means we have to calculate direct material variance. The question is going to tell you which variance we're chasing. Is it going to be direct material? Is it going to be direct labor? Is it going to be variable overhead? So in this case, we're chasing direct material variance. So what do we know? We know that we're following the standards. And based on our standards, we spending, we have to use, we're not spending, we have to use 0.1 kilogram fiber fuel for every product of parka that we produce. And for every kilogram of the fiber fuel, we're paying $5 per kilogram. So our product is parka. Material that we're using to produce that parka is the fiber fuel. Since we're on the material, the question here will be trying to put the question somewhere so we can see the question and at the same time to see the calculation. So the question here is, what's the standard cost?
$5.
$5. Does that make sense? Let me flip to my Excel spreadsheet because I did something. I don't know what I did here with the screen. I know you see my screen, but I lost my Excel spreadsheet. Okay, got it. So, standard price here is $5. So let's move those one a little bit. I'm going to move those a little bit down so we can start filling the gaps now. First thing that we have the standard price. So our standard price is $5. Make sense? What else we know? We know that in the middle calculation, I can flip the standard price right away and fill the gaps for the standard price. So far I filled 2 gaps. So let's keep going. In the question says that last month, 210 kilograms of fiber fuel, which our material, was purchased and used. So from that sentence, what we can extract? What was the actual material purchased and used? So what's the actual quantity of material that we actually used?
Is it the 210 kilograms?
210 kilograms. So now I have the second number, 210 kilograms. So at this point, I can start doing my calculations. I can have the first number right here, which will be 210 times $5. Let's make it bigger. Now, what else we know? We know that we produce how many products?
2,000.
We produce 2,000 products. Now, the last sentence says the material cost total of $1,029. So our actual cost for the material was $1,029. That was our actual cost. So once I know the actual cost and once I know the actual quantity, can I calculate the actual price?
Yes.
Yes. Gonna get the total cost divided by the actual quantity, and I'm gonna get the actual price. Now, what's left? The only thing that's stopping me from further calculation is the standard quantity, correct? Now, do I know how many products I produce?
Yeah.
So this cost that I'm paying here is because I produce 2,000 products. So now I have to find out for those 2,000 products which drive that cost, based on my standards, how much material I supposed to use. Do I have information here? How much material I'm using for 1 unit?
0.1 kilogram.
That's correct. For 1 unit, I'm using 0.1 kilogram. So the question is, in total, how many kilograms I need to produce the 2,000 units based on my standards? That will be 200 kilograms. And that will be my standard quantity, 200 kilograms. Make sense? Do you understand this logic?
Yes.
I know how many units I produce during the period. Because I produce 2,000 units, that's why I paid that much money. Now the question is, based on my standards to produce that many units, how much material I need to use? And since for every unit I'm using 0.1 kilogram, that means in total I need to produce 2,000 Parkers, I need 200 kilograms. So once I get this number, I can do my entire calculation. And now let's start seeing what's happening here. 200 times $5. So, based on my standards, first thing first, based on my standards, to produce 2,000 Parkers, I need to use 200 fiber fuel kilograms, for which, based on my standards, supposed to pay $5. So I supposed to spend $1,000. In reality, I'm not using 200 kilograms of fiber fuel. I'm using 210 kilograms fiber fuel. And I'm spending $1,050. So because of the quantity changes, my quantity variance is how much?
10. No.
$50. 1,050 minus 1,000. So I'm supposed to spend $1,000. I'm spending $1,050. So my quantity variance is $50. Now the question is that favorable for me or unfavorable? If you're supposed to spend 1,000, but you're spending $50 more, is that favorable or unfavorable for you?
Unfavorable.
Unfavorable.
Unfavorable. Now let's see the other thing. Now, if I use 210 kilograms,
More $21 more.
based on the standard price, I'm supposed to spend $1,050. Now, in reality, I'm spending $1,029. What's the difference here? I have
21.
150 minus 1,029. So $21. So I supposed to spend $1,050. I'm spending less with $21. Is that favorable or unfavorable for me?
Favorable.
Favorable. Why? Because I'm spending less. Make sense? On the spending, we're spending less. So now let's see, where is my spending variance? By my standards, I'm supposed to spend $1,000. Actually, I'm spending $1,029. Where is my spending variance? Obviously, that will be 1,021 actual minus 1,000 standard, $29. Favorable or unfavorable now?
Unfavorable.
Favorable.
Unfavorable. Again, because I'm supposed to spend $1,000, I'm spending more, $29 more. We're understanding here. Actual cost is more than the standard. So that drives $29 unfavorable variance. Now, let's think about it. What happened in this company? Again, they're producing their 2,000 Parkers. They're producing it. No questions about it. But instead of using 200 kilograms, they're using 210 kilograms. How many kilograms more they're using?
10.
10 kilograms. How much paying for the kilogram? How much is the cost per kilogram?
So it's the $5 per cost. or-
$5. So from where we get the $50, we get it from the difference of 10 kilograms times $5 per kilogram. Does that make sense now?
Yeah.
Let's make it like this. So that can stay as a formula here and not disappear. How about on the other side? Now I'm using 210 kilograms, but I supposed to pay $5, but I'm spending $4.90. How much is the difference in the price?
10 cents.
10 cents. Why are you so scared? It's 10 cents. So 210 kilograms times 10 cents, what's going to give us? $21. Make sense?
Yeah.
So we're using more materials. Because we're using more materials, we're overspending $50. But magically, we happen that we get a reduction in the price. So we're not spending $5 per kilogram, we're spending $4.90 per kilogram. So we're saving $21. Now, the savings from the lower price is not big enough to cover the overspending for the extra kilogram use. That's why in overall, we're spending $29 more. Question for you. If you see only these results, if you only see this number and only see this number, can you tell me, you're seeing only those two numbers, you don't see anything else, only from those two numbers. Can you tell me why I'm spending $29? Is it because I'm using more materials or because the price per material went down or went up?
The price went up.
No, you're seeing only those two numbers. You don't see anything else. Do you understand this? You're seeing only those two numbers. You don't see any other calculations. Would you be able to tell me why I'm spending $29? Is it because the price went up or because I'm using more quantity?
But you wouldn't be able to tell, no? Because you only have-
Exactly. I wouldn't be able to tell. But once you put everything on the quantity time price, quantity time price, then you can see the whole picture. And now you can say, you're spending $29 more because first, you're overspending because you're using more quantity, but you're saving $21 on the lower price. That's why you're overspending $29. Without this variable analysis that we're doing here, we're never going to be able to tell me why you're spending $29 more. And you're going to start guessing, is the quantity went up? Am I using more material or the price went down? I don't know. Why? Because I don't have the information. I don't know my standards. I don't know my actual. I cannot do any, I don't have any variances. So for that reason, we need that variance. So now once we have this, let's see who is responsible for what. For the quantity variance, we said responsible is production manager. So what's happened in production? Instead of using 200 kilograms, our production manager using 210 kilograms. Now the price variance, we said that will be responsible person will be the purchasing manager because he's the one who purchased the materials. And instead of paying $5 per kilogram, we're paying now $4.90 per kilogram. The question is, who did better job? Production manager or purchasing manager? Who to blame? Who to reward? What do you think? Obviously, the production manager overspending on using more kilograms, where the purchasing manager found lower price for our materials. Which one doing better job?
The purchasing.
Yeah. Oh, no, go ahead.
The purchasing manager is doing better job because he found that lower price for the material. So what I told you in the beginning, once you see the variances, what do we have to do? Identify questions and wait for responses. So let's see, we're going to the production manager and we ask him, hey, why are you spending more kilograms? Based on our standards to produce those units, 2000 Parkers, you suppose 210 kilograms. 200 kilograms. You're spending 210. You're overusing 10 kilograms. Why? And imagine this. He answered, well, what do you want me to do? Look at this scrap material. Production manager give me this material, which is cheaper. And that cheaper material, the quality is not there. So I have to put more materials in the Parker to achieve the quality based on our standards. Or he can tell you because of the new material that the purchasing manager purchased and he just has been delivered, the quality of the material is so poor, so the machine start giving more defects. So we have more now wastage on the material, and we just losing the materials because it just doesn't meet any standards. Now, who's doing better job? Who to blame now? Are you still thinking that we should reward the purchasing manager now?
No.
So you have to be careful when you see the variances. The first important thing is to identify the questions and wait for the responses because you might be surprised. So what's happened in this case? If you go with that scenario, it might happen is because of the lower quality, cheaper price, lower quality, we overusing the materials. So it look like we're saving money when we're buying cheap, but it turns out that we're losing money because we're using more material. Simple thing is, buying cheap is not always profitable. So let's go back to slides and let's see what the slides tells us. Again, we're going to go to this scenario with the fiber fill with the standards. So once we put the numbers that we did, we're going to get that the actual quantity is 210 kilograms. Actual price is 490, which 490 we're getting from the calculation here of total cost divided by the actual kilograms. Standard price, quantity is 200 kilograms. How we get the 200 kilogram standard quantity is 2000 units times 0.1 kilogram per unit, 200 kilograms. Standard price was given to us, we fill, and then we're going to fill the gaps. And we're going to see that we have the quantity variance of $50, unfavorable, price variance at $21, favorable, and $29 overall spending, unfavorable. Now, if you want to use the formula and formula only, again, on the material price variance, see the change in the price and see what's the effect of the change of the price only, since the actual quantity stays the same. And on the material quantity variance, eliminate the price by using only the standard price and see what's the variance in the usage of the material, and you're going to get the quantity variance. That's if you want to use the formula. Both methods gonna bring you to the same result. I personally, my personal preference is this calculation. Why? Because I can see the numbers. I'm more like a visual person. I like to see the numbers, and I like to see the differences and everything. If I go with the formula, it's not that clear for me. It's clear now after many years of teaching this course. It's kind of clear, but in the beginning was the big picture was important for me, so I can see everything on one place. Now again, production manager is responsible for the material quantity variance. Purchasing manager is responsible for material price variance. Now the standard price is used to compute the quantity variance so that the production manager is not held responsible for the purchasing manager performance. Now, if the purchasing manager purchasing cheap material, more of it will be needed on the production, which causing that unfavorable material quantity variance. Now, the poor schedule, what can be the cost for the other side? Poor scheduling the production manager may require the purchasing manager to rush on the orders, and that may trigger the higher price. So you can see we have to identify and go and ask the questions. Once we see the variances, we have to ask the questions because you'll be surprised what kind of explanation you may hear. And you may think that production manager is the one to reward, but turn out to be the opposite. So be careful with this. Don't jump on the conclusion right away. So let's do one check and see how well we can do that variances for the new scenario. Let's go back to the Excel spreadsheet and let's do the Excel spreadsheet again. So I'm going to move all this calculation to the new worksheet. That will be direct material number 2 calculation. And I'm going to pause this. I don't need this question. We're going to pause the new question. So the new question is this company has the following direct material standards to manufacture one product, which is zip. They're using 0.5 pounds per one product, and they're paying $4 per pound. What can we get from the first sentence? Which number we can get? Let me delete all those numbers here.
Are you
And
sharing the screen?
am I sharing the screen? I guess I don't. If you ask me, that's mean I don't share the screen.
Okay, I thought I was missing something. I'm like, what am I missing?
Right? So let's go again. This company has the following direct material standards. 1.5 per zippy for product, which pay $4 per pound. What can we get from here? And from here only. We can get our standard price per
Yes.
direct material, correct?
Yes.
So that will be $4. And we can start plugging the spaces here. I don't need this now, and I don't need this. We don't know it's going to be favorable or unfavorable. We're going to see later. So we get the first one. We're going to get standard price. And standard price going to apply in the right side on the standard and in the middle. Next one. Last week, 1,700 pounds of material were purchased and used to make 1,000 zippies.
So you have
What?
the actual quantity?
Well, let's get the actual quantity. 1,700 pounds. So now we have this number as well. So technically I can calculate my middle number, 1,700 times $4, and I'm going to have my first number, 6,800. Let's see what's happening now. Next one in the question. The total material cost is $6,630. Which one will be that? That will be this one, correct? Let's make it in the green kind of. In the green cell, we're going to have the total cost of $6,630. Can I get, at this point, can I get my actual price?
Yes.
Yes. 6,630 divided by 1,700, that's going to be
3.9.
$3.90. The last thing that left is my standard quantity. Now, do I know how many products I produce?
Didn't
How
you
many?
produce 1,000?
1,000 ZPs. Do I know how much material I have to use per one product?
A pound and a half?
1.5 pounds.
1.5 pounds. That will be pounds. So do I know how many pounds I used? I need to use for based on my standards? That will be 1,500 pounds, correct? And that will be my number here, 1,500 pounds. Based on my standards, I have to use in order to produce 1,000 units. So I have my last number. My last number in the yellow will be 1,500 times $4 per pound. And now I can start doing my variances. First variance, quantity variance, will be the standard cost. So I'm supposed to spend $6,000. But due to the quantity, I'm spending $6,800. Am I overspending or underspending in this case?
Overspending?
Overspending. How much?
800?
$800. 800, that will be favorable or unfavorable?
Definitely unfavorable.
Unfair.
Definitely unfavorable. Okay, we have that one. So now let's see the other one. Based on using 1,700 pounds of material now, and using my standard price, I'm supposed to spend $6,800, but I'm spending $6,630. So am I overspending or underspending in this case?
Standard, actual, still over.
It's so no. Watching this, we're comparing only this number, 6,800. I'm
Mhm.
supposed to spend 6,800, but I'm spending 6,630. Am I overspending or underspending in this case?
Under them.
Under. How much under?
170.
That will be
170?
170. What will be that for me? Favorable or unfavorable?
That's favorable.
That will be favorable. Okay, so in that case, how much is my total spending variance? I have $6,000. Based on my standard, I'm supposed to spend $6,000. In reality, I'm spending 6,630. That will be $630 unfavorable variance. Make sense?
Yep.
Are you guys with me? Everybody?
Yes.
Yes?
Mhm.
So, watch this. I want you to, how comfortable you feeling now? Is it getting better or getting more confusing?
This is good if they don't
Feeling
complicate
better.
the question. If the question is
Okay.
how you write it.
So,
Yeah.
so
If the
that's
question is like that, I get it. If not,
so
no.
so now that's what my next point is. Watch this. Not always questions gonna be like this. Not all the questions gonna be like this. In fact, they can be completely confusing. But you're always going to have this information. Some of the information will be available. So the question here is, watch me carefully. Let me think about. If I eliminate this, right? Eliminate this, but let's put it in different way. Let me get those cells and paste it special, some values. I'm looking for values rather than numbers. Just give me a second to do some adjustments here. So now the calculation is not going to change. And this one I copy it and paste it as a value. So if I eliminate this number, if I eliminate this number, I'm looking what else I can eliminate. If I eliminate this number here, would you able to give me the standard quantity?
Which numbers do we get to see though? Just all the numbers on the screen?
Only the numbers on the screen. So you have all the rest of the numbers. Would you be able to give me the standard quantity?
Yes.
How?
Well, you have the spending variance, you have the price variance, you'll get the difference there to get the quantity variance. Then you work backwards, you have the spending price over there, right?
That's how the questions trick you.
So you can't do that then?
No, no, you can do it, but you can do it. But if you don't know these links, you won't be able to find this the standard quantity.
You have to think then how to
Exactly.
get it.
So you have to know which one is what, because the question is going to throw you the. I can even throw you this. So no, I still have to give you the spending variance, because from the spending variance, once you have the price variance, you can eliminate. So if I can even eliminate this number. You don't need this number.
Because you have the spending variance and you have the actual.
Exactly. Exactly.
So you should be able to get the 6,000 because you know that's
Exactly. You
unfavorable.
should be naturally build up and go here,
Yeah.
right? So, but that's how the questions are given. And that's what I want you to understand. We as educators, we bring you from point A to point B by showing you the logical calculation. But the questions doesn't come from point A to point B. The question is going the opposite way. And that's why you get confused. Especially if you have a multiple choice questions. On the multiple choice questions, you're going to be thrown some information here and there, and then it's going to find, tell me how much is the standard quantity, or tell me how much is the standard price. Can you get me the standard price only by these numbers? I'm going to eliminate even the standard price. Can you get me the standard price?
Come from there.
You have the actual, you have the price variance, and you have the spending variance. Can you give me the standard price? And you have the actual quantity.
By using the price variance,
Yes,
and
by using standard variance, you're going to get this number. And once you get this number divided by 1,700,
then
you're going
we
to get
have
the
the
standard,
standard price.
right? So now the other thing is you may have the actual, you may actual quantity, actual price, price variance, spending variance, and the question may ask, how much is the standard quantity? Now what you have to do, first you have to go here to find the standard price. Then you have to go here to find the total standard cost. Once you have the standard price, you have to know the standard price coming here, and then you can get the standard quantity. Make sense? There's so much game here.
Yes.
But again, you're always going to have enough information to calculate the number that is asked for the question. That's what I want you to understand. The question is not going to give you, is not going to miss any information. So if you have a question, if you're wondering what to do, is think about it. They're not going to give you information, missing information here. There will be the missing information that they have to find out is always going to have enough information to calculate it. But you might have to do it on the stages. Like here, first find out the standard price, and once you find the standard price, you can go to the standard quantity. Okay, let's bring back everything the way it was with the calculations and everything. So you can have, I can post you this one later and you can have it. So now let's go back to the slides and let's complete the slides. Let me share my screen with the slides now. And now once we have this information, the first question was here, what was the material price variance here? If you remember, the material price variance was 800 kilograms, right? 800 unfavorable. How, no, 170. So that will be that material price variance. Material price variance was 170. That was right here. Let's find it together. That was 170. The other way you can get to 170 is I have 1,700 pounds, correct? And how much is the change in the price?
10 cents.
10 cents. 10 cents. And that's going to give you 170. And on here, calculation will be, I have, what's the price of the change in the quantity? 200
200.
pounds time $4. And that's going to give you 800 unfavorable. Make sense? That's another way you to calculate this. So you have 170 favorable on the price and 800 unfavorable on the material, on the quantity. Let's go back to those slides. So here the correct answer is 170 unfavorable. And the next question is ask you for material quantity variance. That will be 800 unfavorable in this case. And if we have to do the diagram, that's how we're doing the diagram. Now let's do one more for the material, and I'm going to give you a short break. So now for the material variance, every time when you see the big fluctuation, those has to be bring it up to the managers, and the managers have to identify and correct from where that variance is coming from and what kind of action we can take in order to eliminate those variances in the future. And always significant variances should be highlighted and chased and find out what's going on. Now, so far on the material variance, we saw that all the material that we're purchasing, we're using for our production. But that's not always going to be the case. We have to understand that in reality, we're going to purchase one amount of the material and we're going to use different amount of material. Now, the question is, how are we going to calculate the variances when what we purchase is not what we use? Obviously, we're going to be in different realities. So for that reason, we're going to do two separate calculations. One calculation will be for the price variance based on the material purchased. And then we're going to do the separate calculation for the quantity variance based on the material used. How exactly we're going to do this? We're going to use this example here to show you that. And let's move to the Excel again. Let me share the Excel before I forget. And we're gonna use another worksheet here. I'm gonna copy this worksheet. I'm gonna label it direct material number 3. And let's see the question now. I'm gonna share the question with you. So again with the ZP. We stand with the ZP. We steal 1.5 per pounds per 1 ZP at $4 per pound. So that information stayed the same. The interesting part is last week, 2,800 pounds material were purchased. So what's the actual quantity of the material purchased now? That will be 2,800 pounds. Correct? And for that material, let's do some modification here. For that material, we paid $10,920. $920. Again, we purchased 2,800 pounds of material. Once we have the total cost and we have the quantity, I can easily calculate the actual price. So I'm still paying $3.90. Now, based on my standards, how much I supposed to pay per pound?
$4.
$4. My standard price here will be $4. And I can get this variance, 2,800 times $4. I'm gonna get the price variance, which will be 11,200 minus 10,920. That will be 280. So am I overspending or underspending in this case?
Overspending.
So watch this. I'm supposed to spend $11,200.
Oh, sorry, underspending.
I'm underspending. So is that favorable or unfavorable?
Favorable.
Favorable. Okay, so I have price variance 280 favorable. But that's because I'm purchasing 2,800 pound materials. Now, let's see something else. 1,700 pounds only were used to make 1,000 ZPs. Now, if I go with the standards, based on my standard, I'm supposed to use 1,500 pounds. If I plug here and start comparing those numbers, am I going to be in the same reality? When I'm purchasing 2,800 and I'm using 1,700. Right? We're moving to the different reality. For that reason, we cannot do on the same calculation here the price variance and the quantity variance. So how are we going to do this? For the quantity variance, again, with the quantity variance, we're going to use the material used rather than material purchase. So we're going to push all those things down. Let's push it down a little bit. And I'm going to drag this calculation for the standard, and I'm going to move it down with all together with this. I need, for the quantity variance, I need this part only. So for the quantity variance, let me grab those here. Put it this one here and this one here. Actually, I need this one so I can copy it, paste it back here. Some modification a little bit. Quantity variance, I need this quantity variance to go here. And I need this description to come here. So for the quantity variance, what I'm going to use is I'm going to use the material, the information, which is related only and only for my actual usage. So in reality, we use 1,700 pounds. So our spending for based on the standard price for using the actual 1,700 pounds should be $6,800. And based on our standards, we still have to use 1,500 pounds. So 1,000 ZPs times 1.5 pounds. So that will be 1,500 pounds times standard price is still $4. And we're going to get this calculation here will be 1,000 times $4 and it's going to give us $6,000. So our quantity variance here is it's going to be a little bit different, but that will be in the same reality. That will be $800. What will be that in this case? Favorable or unfavorable? Are you guys following me here? Or I lost you?
Yeah, we are here.
So what will be that for me? Favorable or unfavorable in this case?
Favorable.
So again, I have to spend 6,000. I'm spending 6,800.
Favorable.
Isn't it unfavorable?
Unfavorable.
Unfavorable. So again, we are on the cost side. Every time when you see bigger number than the standards, we're overspending. So that means unfavorable for us. Stay with the cost. Every time, if my cost is 6,000, supposed to spend 6,000, I'm spending 6,800. That's more than I'm supposed to spend. So that's unfavorable for me. Make sense? The whole point is here to understand that for the price variance, we're going to use the actual material purchase. And for the quantity variance, we're going to use the actual material used in production to produce those 1,000 units of ZPs. That also you can see it on the slides, I believe, when we have two different calculations. One is for the price variance, which is based on the actual quantity purchased. And then we have the second calculation for the quantity variance, which is based on the actual quantity used in the production. In this case, we're not going to have a spending variance because we're not in the same realities here. Quantity purchase is 2,800 pounds. The quantity used was only 1,700 pounds. But we still can have the price variance and the quantity variance. So now we're going to move to the labor, but before we move to the labor, do you want to have a short break?
Sure.
Okay, let's have a short break. And I'm going to catch you at 11:05.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Pro.
Okay,
No problem.
let's go then. I think everybody is here today. I don't have to do attendance today. Okay, good. Now we can leave. Okay, let's go now with the labor variance. How are we going to deal with the labor? Well, same idea, just a little bit tweak in the terminology. Let's go back to Excel spreadsheet. And let's see what kind of tweaks we have to do on that calculation that we have. So first, since we are on the labor, we have to do some adjustment in our terminology. We're not going to measure direct labor on the quantity. We're going to go with the actual hours. That's how we're going to measure the labor. And instead of price, we're going to have actual rate. Now here we're going to stay with the same idea like before for the material. Here we're going to have actual hours. Here we're going to have standard rate. And on the very right side, we're going to have the standard hours times the standard rate. And that's how we're moving from the material into the labor. Hours, rate, hours, rate. So now we're gonna have a price variance anymore. We're gonna have a rate variance. That's price gonna disappear. We're gonna be rate only. And instead of quantity, we're gonna have efficiency. Efficiency variance. And that's where we are. So now let's start to look at our question. So first thing that you have to identify when you start reading the question, you have to identify which variance analysis you have to do. Once you see the following direct labor standards, that means we have to do direct labor. For the direct labor standards, what we have? We have a standard that we have to spend 1.2 hours per 1 unit, which is parka, and based on our standards, we're paying $10 per hour for every hour that our workers work. So what we can get from here? We can get our standard hour, standard price per hour, correct? Can you see it? Am I sharing my screen? Okay, so my standard rate will be $10. And that $10 is going to reflect on the middle calculation as well. I have my first number. What else we can get? Last month, employee actually worked 2,500 hours. So I have my actual hours work, 2,500. So 2,500 here. So I have my first calculation. In the middle, I'm going to have 2,500 times $10. My number here will be 25,000. What else I know? My actual cost. My total actual cost for direct labor was 26 to 50. Once I have my actual cost, I can calculate my actual rate, which will be the cost divided by total hours. So my rate is $10.50. And the last thing that left is to get my standard hours. How can I get that one? Once I see how many products I produce. I produce 2,000 products. In order to produce the 2,000 products, I supposed to use that will be product, let's put it here, 2,000 products. I supposed to use direct labor per unit. In this case will be 1.2 hours. So based on my standards, I supposed to use 2,400 hours. So that will be 2,400 here. And I have my last number for my calculation, which will give me the standard cost. My standard cost in order to produce 2,000 units for the direct labor should be $24,000. If I supposed to spend $24,000, in reality, based on the hours only, I'm spending $25,000. How much more I'm spending? Obviously, that will be $1,000 more. Is that favorable or unfavorable for me? You guys there? Can you guys hear me?
Isn't that
Yes.
unfavorable?
So it's unfavored?
Unfavorable. Unfavorable. Because I'm supposed to spend 24, I'm spending 25. Unfavorable. How about the rate variance? I'm spending 26, but I'm supposed to spend only 25.
Unfavorable?
Unfavorable again. So my total spending variance is ginormous, $2,250 unfavorable. Imagine. So in the first glance, what's happened in the company? First, they pay $10 based on the standards, they pay $10 per hour. Obviously, the workers start $10. There's nothing you can do with $10 now. So they start using more hours, slowing down on their work. We increase the $10 to $10.50, but we still not efficient enough. So first the workers work more hours, and second is because we increase the rate per hour. Just because of the more hours spent, we're spending more 100 hours, correct? 100 hours more time, we're paying $10 per hour. That's how we get our 100 hours. Let's do again. That's how we get those 1,000, and here 1,250. That's gonna come from 2,000, 2,500, 2,500 hours, 500 hours, time
50 cents.
50 cents per hour. And that's how we get 1,250. 0.50. Make sense? Okay, let's see how the slide's dealing with this. On the slides, not like that, where we are. Video variance. Let me see, I lost the slides here. For the labor, again, we have the same numbers. How we get the actual rate? Total spending divided by the total actual hours, we're getting the actual rate for the hours. And how we get the standard hours? We get the production, actual production, time the standards for 1 unit of production. We're gonna get the standard hours for production. So that's if you use the formula, how we gonna get the variances. In this case, for the labor, who we gonna keep responsible? We're gonna keep responsible only and only the production manager. Why? Because his job is to mix the people. His job is to motivate the people. His job is to teach them how to do quality work. And his job is to train them, the employee. So be careful once, if you become a production manager, be careful when you're mixing the skills level workers. Because you might turn out that instead of increasing the quality of the skill workers, you might destroy it. Because you have to keep in mind, if you have a very exceptional worker and you have a worker who's a bad worker, if you pair those two together, you may end up with two bad workers. So for that reason, be very careful when you're pairing people. So let's see repetition of the thing that we just did. I'm gonna grab this content here and I'm gonna post it again in the Excel spreadsheet. And let's go together and let's do it on the Excel spreadsheet. Let's drag this one. Eliminate this one and post it again. So we're gonna go back to the ZPs. Let me delete some of the information here so we can start over again. So with the ZPs, again, we have to do what we have to do. The variance that we have to do is for direct labor. The following standard set for the direct labor. 1.5 standard hours for one product ZP at $12 direct labor per hour. The information that we can take from here is the $12 standard rate, which will become here standard rate $12. Next thing, last week, 1,550 direct labor hours were worked. We can see the actual hours, 1,550 and 1,550 here. And the total labor cost that we pay for 1,550 hours is $18,910. So $18,910 we pay for the total hours that our workers spent. So our actual rate in this case will be $12.20. So as you can see, the rate going up. The last piece of information was how many standard hours we actually need to produce those 1,000 units. So our production is 1,000 units, and based on our standards, we're supposed to spend 1.5 hour per unit. So in total, we need 1,500 hours. So when we plug 1,500 hours, we can start doing our calculations. First calculation here will be this one time $12. The next calculation will be this one time $12 again. And we're going to start seeing our variances. First will be efficiency variance. Where is our efficiency variance? Looks like $600, but is it going to be favorable or unfavorable?
Unfavorable?
Unfavorable. Why? Because we overspending. Why we overspending? That's because we using more hours. How many hours? In fact, 50 hours more. For which hours we paying $12? And that's going to give us a $600 unfavorable. Let's see the rate variance. Obviously, rate, as you can see, the rate that we're paying our employee went up with 20 cents. That's going to drive favorable or unfavorable variance?
Unfavorable?
Unfavorable variance again, which will be $310. Unfavorable again. How are we going to calculate that one? Very simple. We're going to have 1,550 hours times the difference in the price, which is in this case is 0.20 cents. And that's how we're going to get this number. Let's put this number, and there we go. Still not there. Like, should be this one. Okay, let's go back to the slides and let's finish those. The only thing that I want you to remember here is, let me share this again, Excel spreadsheet. I want you to remember that we have rate variance is 310 unfavorable and efficiency is 600 unfavorable, because probably there will be some multiple choice questions that we have to answer. Now let's go with the first one. How much is the labor rate variance? And that will be letter A, right? Which is 310 unfavorable. And the next one is the labor efficiency variance. That will be 600 unfavorable, the way we saw it. And this is again repetition of what we just did. for the calculation of the actual hours time actual rate, actual hours times standard rate, and standard hours times standard rate. Let's do one more. Now let's move into the variable overhead, which will be the last thing that we're going to do today. Variable overhead. For the variable overhead, again, we're going to go back to the Excel spreadsheet. And the Excel spreadsheet, I have to do some modification now. That will be not too many. That will be variable overhead. Let's delete this information and let's put the new one. So the question here, for the variable overhead, the good thing is that we're going to use the same abbreviation like direct labor. So the variance is also going to be actual hours, actual rate, variable overhead rate, standard hours, standard variable overhead rate, and in the middle we're going to have actual hours, standard rate. And we're going to start working on our calculations. So this company, how are we going to find out which variance you're doing? Again, from the question. The question is going to drive you to the solution, which variance we have to use. So in this case, we're following direct variance manufacturing overhead labor standard for the mountain park. So as you can see, we have to do the variable overhead, manufacturing overhead variance. But for the variable overhead, the driver that drives the overhead is the labor, direct labor. So for every hour direct labor, we're going to charge some variable overhead. So our standard is for every unit, we're spending 1.2 standard hours per parker. And our variable overhead rate is $4 per hour. That's going to get the first information about the standard rate, which is $4. Next thing that we're going to see is the last month employee actually worked 2,500 hours. So we can get the actual hours, 2,500 here and 2,500 here. And here we have our first calculation. Times $4 is going to be $10,000. Now, our actual variable overhead for the month was 10,500. That will be our actual 10,500 cost. And we can find the actual rate for the overhead by 10,000 divided by 2,500 hours is going to be $4.20. The last piece of the puzzle was how much is the standard hours. How many standard hours we need to produce 2,000 units of our parka. So the 2,000 is our production. Per unit, we need to spend 1.2 hours. 1.2 hours. So in total, we need 2,400 hours. So we have all the numbers, and now we can start calculating our variances. First, we're going to get our efficiency variance to see how efficient we are. 10,000 minus 960. We are inefficient with $400, so that will be we overspending $400. Instead of spending 960, we're spending 10,000. That will trigger unfavorable variance. And for the rate variance, we're going to have 10,500 minus 10,000. That's going to give us another 500 unfavorable variance. How we can calculate it? The same way we're calculating it. Here we have increase of $100. 100 hours. Hours in this case, time only $4, and it's going to give you $400 unfavorable variance. On the other side, we have change of 20 cents times 2,500 is going to give you 500 unfavorable rate variance. Let's see the slides. The slides are going to show us exactly the same that we did. We're pretty much following the slides, and that's how we get the actual overhead rate. And that's how we get the actual, the standard hours that we need to produce those 2,000 Parkers, which is 2,400 hours. Now, let's do repetition of the manufacturing overhead. Again, we're going to move to the Excel spreadsheet. Is the Excel spreadsheet helps or make it more confusing?
It's helpful.
No, it's helpful
It's help.
because
So
it's
if it,
always the same formula, right, Professor?
right, that's always the
Mhm.
same formula. That's the tricky part. Now, listen this. If you're smart now, when you're doing your assignment, you're going to use the Excel spreadsheet. Or if you don't want to use the Excel spreadsheet, do it on the page, on the paper, on the sheet of paper, do exactly the same thing. And that's how easily you can visualize the numbers, and you can easily come up with the solution of the problem. So let's see in this case. This company, again, using the following variable overhead standard to manufacture. So the question is, which variance we're doing? Variable overhead, where we can see it in the question. So what they're using as a driver for the overhead, later on we can see that once you see direct labor hours, that means direct labor hours are the one that driving the overhead. So how they're applying the overhead? The base on their standards, 1.5 standard hours per 1 unit at $3 per direct labor hour. So we have our standard rate, which is $3 here and $3 here. The next thing that we need is more information. Last week, 1,550 hours were actually worked. Let's put the actual hours, 1,550 and 1,550. So we have our first number here. This one time $3. We produce 1,000 products, ZPs, and we spend $5,115 for the variable overhead rate. Overhead. So in total, our overhead cost is $5,115. So I can get my actual rate, $5,115 divided by 1,550 hours, and it's going to give me $3.30. So as you can see, the variable overhead rate went up with 30 cents. That's obviously is going to drive us unfavorable variance right away. The other thing that we can see is that number of the products that we produce 1,000 products, and based on our standards, we're supposed to spend or charge overhead. That will be the direct labor, per unit, with using 1.5 hours per unit. That's going to give us 1,500 total hours. 1,500 total hours. And that's going to give us our last number. So now we can start calculating variances. First variance will be obviously unfavorable because we overspending $150. That's coming from the 50 hours extra that we're spending time $3 per hour, 150. And the next one is the rate variance. Since the rate increased with 30 cents, we overspending here. Another 465, which coming for 1,550 hours. I'm 30 cents only increase. And we're gonna get, so what we have to remember, rate variance is 465 and efficiency variance 150, both unfavorable. Let's move to the slides and finish the slides for the variable overhead. So what was the variable manufacturing overhead spending variance? I believe we calculated 465 unfavorable in our case. And what was the efficiency variance? 150 unfavorable in our case. And this is, if we have to do this chart, the ones that we did on the Excel spreadsheet. And that concludes the direct material, direct labor, and variable manufacturing overhead. Now for the fixed manufacturing overhead, we're gonna do it next time because I want you with fresh minds, not tired after 2 hours and something lecture. So the last thing that I want to tell you is how we're gonna deal with if we have a service company and how we're gonna calculate the variances for the service company. Now, so far we're dealing with the manufacturing company since we have to have the product. And to manufacture the product, we need direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. For the service company, we're gonna do the same variances. Service company, they might use some materials, but mostly they're gonna use the labor, but we're gonna apply the same approach for the service company. And next time we're gonna continue with the next variance, which is for the fixed overhead variance. That's a little bit more tricky. That's why I need you with a fresh mind in order you to understand exactly application of the fixed overhead variance, because it's completely different than direct material, direct labor, and variable manufacturing overhead variance. That will be all for today, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.